Call my fighter Pat McAfee, because he's just out here punting balls.
Balls, 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 balls.
MMA is a relatively new sport, so it's surprising that MMA games have already peaked so early on in its life cycle. The THQ UFC Undisputed games were developed by Ukes, who are the same people who brought you wrestling games where you could do diving elbow drops off of helicopters. The Undisputed series would abruptly end after the third one because THQ committed, as the YouTubers would say, unaliving via a drawing tablet that nobody bought. The UFC game license would go to EA despite Dana White saying,
EA sucks.
And the Undisputed series would pass on to the realm of discontinued beloved sports franchises. And EA's attempt at UFC games were middling, glitchy games. So we'll take a look at Undisputed 3 to see how well it holds up, if at all. Now before we start, I am using the UFC Undisputed Forever mod. This mod updates the rosters, but keep in mind there were some visual glitches that happened when I first started playing. That's why Marvin Vettori is looking like he has that Ed and Nettie sunburn, and my creative fighter looks like he has a sweater vest made out of hair. Also, ugh. But that cleared up after a bit. The mod just doesn't update the roster, it updates the backgrounds, it adds music that the fighters actually come out to, it adds the Tale of the Tape theme, Bruce Buffer introductions, even the transition that UFC uses today. And, most importantly, a new soundtrack that includes Maven's theme. But getting into the game, UFC Undisputed's legacy, for me anyway, was how ahead of the time it was when it comes to a lot of the little things and the fact that this just feels like MMA. I know I sound like a game journalist, but hear me out. The presentation has a bunch of the bells and whistles you'd expect from MMA, even having those pre-fight hype packages and having weigh-ins with face-offs. But that's not all, the presentation in the actual gameplay is where things are taken to the next level. Now, I don't want to compare much to EA UFC games, but it's literally the only other decent MMA series I can compare it to, so yeah. The fighters in Undisputed move and throw with bad intentions. Nothing looks light, from the stand-up to the grappling to the knockouts.
Oh, beautiful hook! Fight is over! That is all it took!
Yeah, was the post-fight donkey punches necessary, my guy?
They were super necessary.
In the EA UFC games, everything looks so weak. In the grappling, I like to describe EA UFC as two dudes giving a BJJ demonstration, as opposed to two dudes who are essentially fighting for their lives. Like, look at EA UFC's ground and pound. It's pathetic. It looks like pro wrestling punches. Look at Undisputed. You see what I mean? This is the look of a guy who's not going to remember his social security number the next day. While you could say that Undisputed is stiff and robotic looking, and hey, I don't even disagree really. Like, look at this uppercut. This thing starts at Mexico and ends in Canada. But the thing is, when dudes are getting beat up, I'm sold on it. Even getting the small details in the game right, like the cage. It's not just a wall to keep the fighters in. It moves when you back into it. It makes noise as your back scrapes across it. You can even kick it completely inadvertently while doing something completely unrelated.
That's it! Let him go! Double up! Double up! Boom! Nice! Nice!
If you throw a strike while a fighter is trying to touch gloves, the fans will boo.
How do you see this playing out for the champion? He's coming in for the first time as the welterweight champion, ready to prove that that belt belongs around his waist. He's fought hard.
You can knock out mouthpieces. The ref will stand closer to the fighters when you are close to a finish. To put it simply, while EA UFC is naturally animated better in terms of how fluid it looks, the thing is, I don't believe in it when I'm playing it. But I do believe in these ground and pound shots where the punches move the fighter. But let's talk about the actual gameplay. To start, I want to say that you should play this with the energy setting to simulation. I played with the default option because, you know, it's the default option, and this just makes the game worse in every aspect because stamina drain is almost non-existent. Like look, I have Dustin over here throwing out 1-2s like a Sesame Street character trying to teach a child how to count, but he's hardly affected by it. With simulation on, that's not a thing. Guys actually get tired, which is a big deal. This leads to more knockouts and more opportunities for grappling. Undisputed's control scheme is definitely unique. It's something that can be quite difficult to learn. You have your punch buttons and your kick buttons. You have the L1 button, which is a modifier to your strikes, where each fighter has exclusive moves which help each fighter feel different in their own way. Things start to get a little funky when you realize every other strike is determined by the left analog stick combinations. For instance, pressing square will be a jab or a straight, but pressing square with the left stick push forward will throw a hook. And pressing square with the left stick back will result in this previously mentioned Donkey Kong Smash Bros. Uppercut. Having a control scheme like this means there's no strikes while moving for the most part. Some say it's more realistic this way, but can you really say this when one of the most famous knockouts in the history of the sport was Conor knocking out Aldo while on the back foot? You try and do this in Undisputed and what do you get? I don't necessarily find this to be a problem as it's still fun to play, but overall the biggest problem that the Undisputed games had was it's not all that user friendly. Like look at leg kicks for an example. You hold L2 and press a kick button to do a light one. You hold L2 and press a kick button while holding the left stick forward to do a medium one. You hold L2 and flick the left stick forward, then press a kick button to do a heavy kick. Yeah, in EA's UFC, you just press one button to do this simple attack. The game has a tutorial, but you have to clear each and every lesson in order to get to the actual deep stuff. Like bro, I know how to walk in a video game, why am I even forced to do this? But at least this game has a practice mode, unlike other combat sports video games named Undisputed.
Still a piece of garbage.
So once you figure out the controls and get used to these concepts, it's a really good game. There's no sliding around the octagon, you have to work your way inside. One misplaced strike could send you straight to the CTE Emporium.
Big right hand!
I'm positive he did.
But it's not even counter strikes to worry about. Going in too aggressively can lead to a perfectly timed takedown. Trust me, playing against a wrestler could be a 7th layer of hell. But when you land that counter knee, when they're diving for your legs, that's the stuff that needs to be injected into my veins whenever I'm feeling sad.
Oh, that one dropped him!
The grappling could also suffer from the hard to learn aspect. You do quarter circles with the right stick like you're playing skate. To transition, you hold the right stick to block transitions, but this drains stamina. You can flick the right stick at the perfect time for a counter. Now with grappling, there's just so much here. Butterfly guard, being able to move around so things aren't stationary, seated against the cage, being able to move on the ground while on your back like a cowering person in a horror movie. Up kicks, needing to posture up to land strikes, and not just punches, elbows, hammer fists, hooks, and being able to catch those strikes on the bottom. You don't just grapple, you impose your will onto someone. Strategy shifts when you realize that the game has a Pride mode, or Ryzen for the mod, which has a different rule set where you could do stomps and knees to the head. For example, the north-south position, aka 69, this position with the UFC rule set is pretty useless. All of a sudden you can knee a dude on the top of the dome and that can't even be blocked.
He's hurt! Whoa!
Worst 69 ever. There's also soccer kicks.
Going at it, man, easy.
What a shot!
I give up.
Get the hell out of here!
Stomps, knees, kicks. Take it in, boys. This is the closest we'll ever get to a felony fights video game. Every 5-round fight feels like a dogfight, especially if you work the body. You start to get characters doing things out of desperation that they don't normally do.
Oh, you're a wrestler.
Working the clinch game. Nice. He's looking for a guillotine.
12 seconds later.
If you can look past the seemingly unorthodox controls and learn the game, this is well worth playing. Probably the only two things I can look at as complete negatives are the takedowns and submissions. When driving for a takedown, if it isn't immediately defended, you have to twirl the right stick like a damn Mario Party minigame. If you go up against a wrestler who is constantly going to be shooting takedowns, you constantly have to be spinning your stick over and over and over again. I think they could have implemented a better way to do this, but I can't blame them too much because games at the time were full of this shit. Submission attempts bring up this WWE ring around the rosy minigame, and it's just not good. I hate it. Game modes. We have title mode where you pick a fighter and go through the top 15 to eventually get a title shot. This starts out laughably easy and then gets hard, like these dudes become omnipotent with their head movement.
Combination. Oh, good nice counter right, he's down.
This is #1 bullshit.
Let's pray that you don't come across a grappler in this matchup because they do anything, and I mean anything, to get to you. Once you beat the champion, you can go into title defense mode, which works like a gauntlet match. You have to win as many as possible while your health carries over from each fight. These two modes are simple, but I play them a lot. My favorites, actually. It just goes to show what good gameplay can do for a bare basics mode. There's also this mode where you have to relive past fights where you choose the fighter you'd want to win. Unfortunately, this mod doesn't update it to have modern fighters in it. Career mode is here and it's alright. You make your guy. I nicknamed him Destruction, but when the crowd chants it, it sounds like piece of shit. The issue that most career modes have is that you run into the same cycle with little to no variation. You schedule a fight, you train, you fight, you schedule a fight, you train, you fight. That's pretty much this career mode. The training minigames are fine. You are rated with Dave Meltzer's stars after training, but it's only up to 4 stars for some reason. Maybe if you flipped those tires in the Tokyo Dome, you would have gotten at least 5 stars. The thing about the training is that if you simulate it, the game gives you the worst possible outcome all the time, to my knowledge. So you have to train manually in order to get any decent gains. So you go through in an independent promotion and fight until you get to the UFC, and fight until you get the title. There are some bright spots, like being able to fight in the indie promotion for as long as you want instead of just shooting straight to the UFC. And you can dabble in other weight classes. But the UFC career mode can implement more from the outside aspect of the octagon, like fighter contract negotiations, making weight, hiring a staff, money in general. But career mode is fine if you just want a mode where you want to ascend up the rankings, but nothing too much beyond that. Like I mentioned earlier, MMA games peaked with Undisputed 3. The UFC license would move to EA, and they haven't matched that MMA feel that this game does. It's unfortunate because with some tweaking and making things a little bit more user-friendly and adding in some things that eventually could lead to even better gameplay, we could have had great MMA games for years to come. With THQ going out of business and Yuke's, the developer, just kinda existing, we will never have any sort of follow-up.